Real Star Wars and its fans are under attack constantly. No, it didn't begin with The Last Jedi, even though it does seem to be a watershed moment in Star Wars fandom. The largest attack on real Star Wars came on April 25th, 2014. This has been covered by me and others many times before. Some of the attacks are precision strikes aimed at discrediting the original fanbase as part of the larger strategy of completely rebuilding the Star Wars audience and what Star Wars means. Others are virtue signaling exercises by Disney Star Wars fans in the hopes of gaining attention or legitimizing their opinions by engaging in whataboutism, even using expanded universe stories as subjects. Lastly, there are random articles written by critics who seem to be responding to someone but are too afraid to name names. The last two groups seem to have a willingly oblivious, childish, and ignorant take on the fandom and the history of the property. Despite pages of evidence over decades of publishing, they continue to push false narratives and selectively choose what information to use in their pieces. In this video, we will take a look at such a piece from MovieWeb. No, Disney has not ruined the Star Wars franchise, by Olly Dyche. Olly is one of those individuals who have the odd distinction of being considered a critic, as shown here on IMDb, who writes for several outlets while getting minimal traction on social media in terms of influence. Shocker, he likes Andor a lot. Oh, and Last Jedi. His politics could be guessed at, but they don't need to be. Here, he simps for President Barack Hussein Obama's top movie list, and here, he cheers the standing down of Elon Musk as CEO of Twitter, not even fully understanding the implications of such an action. Now that we know a little bit more about Mr. Dyche, let's take a look at his article. Criminally panned as ruining Star Wars. Here's why Disney didn't actually ruin the franchise. It's safe to say that there has been somewhat of a preconception when it comes to Star Wars under the ownership of Disney, with many hardcore Star Wars fans claiming that the franchise was better before it was Disneyfied. But will someone tell an unruly Star Wars fan they are wrong? Oh no, and don't even think about saying that The Last Jedi isn't that bad, or else you will certainly be shunned and the target of unnecessary hate within the community. Let's stop right there. Media outlets have been telling Star Wars fans that don't like TLJ they are wrong for a very long time. Vox hit us with this 4,000-word article the week the film came out. Earlier this year, I made a video on this article from We Got This Covered. In both cases, they pushed back on TLJ criticism and actually promoted hate and shunning themselves. These are just two examples and are by no means the only instances of stereotyping defenders of real Star Wars. Disney acquired the ownership of Lucasfilm on October 30th, 2012. Buzz! It was December 21st. He goes on to point out the things Disney has gifted us with the Star Wars name slapped on it. Stuff like the trilogy fans don't like, lore-breaking streaming shows and cartoons, as well as an amusement park based on a setting invented just for the park. First, the mere fact that they gave us something doesn't mean that that thing was of value. Second, Lucasfilm had given fans decades of movies, television shows, games, books, comics, collectibles, and amusement park rides. He goes on to give some random examples and probably thinks he was clever for doing so. He writes that The Force Awakens was many fans' first interaction with a female Jedi? Next, live-action TV is good after perpetuating the myth that Mandalorian is objectively good, a notion we've debunked many times. He mentions the return of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen in an otherwise disappointing show, proving these people are easily swayed by casting and member berries. We'll hold off for a moment on addressing Andor. Baby Yoda! Without Disney taking ownership, it's highly unlikely Grogu would have ever been created. Thanks for furthering the case that Disney shouldn't have taken ownership, Olly.
Star Wars animated shows, don't call them cartoons, are better than ever.
We wouldn't have got, The satisfying and emotional ending of The Clone Wars if Disney didn't reboot the canceled series for one final season. You mean you wouldn't have gotten Dave Filoni further cementing Ahsoka as a character that is completely out of place with events from the films? The franchise is bigger and better than ever. After the prequel trilogy ended, it feels as if Star Wars felt somewhat dead in the water, at least until Disney acquired the rights and brought much needed and appreciated life into the franchise. Didn't he just call Clone Wars near perfect? That's not a sentiment I agree with, but it's literally in the previous paragraph of the article and it came out after the prequel trilogy. In the same paragraph, comparing the Star Wars property to Marvel Cinematic Universe in a positive sense is telling. That's the fan base Disney is after. Those attracted to bright objects and a predilection for refusing to critically think and to crave the next production, of which there is a constant stream. Speaking of which, calling the Star Wars franchise nonstop now discounts it being nonstop in the past. Despite the overblown dark times in the late 80s, there was a steady flow of Star Wars content from 1977 to 2012. And so the attacks come. They come in the form of brand-worshipping praise of all that Disney has done, with the implication that you should genuflect to the mouse for the quantity of content it has produced. And if you don't, you are toxic, too dumb to understand the supposed intellectual underpinnings of the storytelling and characters, or you are simply a racist for not loving lame characters Disney Lucasfilm creates, despite a history of loving characters and performers across the spectrum, be they live action or animated. Let's flip back to Andor. Despite the warning signals before the show debuted, we've had former critics of Disney Lucasfilm latching onto the show. It breaks lore, it promotes a communist message, and even features many of the woke elements criticized in other productions. Worse, it is used by cultural subverters to gaslight the fandom into thinking Star Wars was a certain way from the start, using out-of-context quotes from George Lucas himself. Why do the once enemies of Disney Star Wars that were such a menace capitulate to Disney Lucasfilm? So much for the hashtag Cancel Disney Plus. The anti-Disney base is afflicted with war wariness. They jump through hoops to rationalize their defense of thing I like, and their liking of that thing is not consistent with what they did not like in the past. But us, we will continue to be battle ready, defending real Star Wars and other universes from actually toxic entertainment conglomerates, weirdo fans, and hacks like Olly Dyche. We will continue to be the real rebellion.